Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you guys here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Today is May 5th, 2026, also known as Revenge of the 5th. So good to see all of you here. Also, happy Cinco de Mayo to all of you who are celebrating today. It is Cinco de Mayo and Taco Tuesday. That means you deserve double the amount of tacos and double the amount of JB. You're very welcome. Also, if you guys have not already, please go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps me out to be able to reach more people. This helps out with the algorithm. Let's be real. I'm just going to be real with you. All right. Because we got to reach more people. We got to tell the truth. And we also got to activate people in order to be able to look at our lives and see, hey, we can change it. We are the heroes that we're looking for. So please go ahead and give a like to the stream there. Also, if you guys like to, you guys can subscribe to my Substack. Gives you email notifications whenever I write any articles, have any clips uploaded, or go live just like this. So thank you so very much to all of you out there. All right, if you have not already, also you guys can send me a question to qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. This gives you ability to ask me a question. I give a video response or react to a video that you guys found interesting for me to react to. So I apologize for the tardiness, but I am running a little bit late. I'm gonna be real with y'all. I was 50-50 on even going live today. 50-50. I'm gonna tell you why. Hold on. I need that caffeine. So the reason why is because I had to close last night. I didn't get home till after 1 a.m. So by the time I got something to eat and got into bed, close to 2:30. My bedtime is like between 10:30 and 11. I'm not a night owl. Not at all. So when I say I'm tired and exhausted, I should really have this tea in a IV bag fed to me intravenously right now. But unfortunately, that technology doesn't exist. It is not humanly possible. And also, I don't like sticking myself. I don't like needles in the first place. But I am here for you because these stories are very interesting and we got to get to them. So let's say hello to people in the chat and then we will quickly get into the stories for today. So we have Edward starting off, says, what's up, JB? Chris Moss is doing his thing. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And we're going to be talking about that because, look, over the years, I mean, like, my respect for him has been growing. My respect for Chris Moss has been growing like a little kid on Flintstones vitamins. Okay? I'm a big kid now. Look, it has been growing. And yeah, I really need to get him on the show because I really want to have a conversation with him. I've talked to him before, but I would like to have him on here, be able to, you know, talk more about the lessons he's learned along the way. Because, I mean, he's not only is he a brilliant guy, but one thing I love about the community that I have built around me is that I am surrounded by people who are devoted to justice and compassion, and they are very kind people, but also they are deeply loving of humanity and the planet. And on top of all that, they are absolutely brilliant. And so I have to acknowledge that. I have to give these beautiful people their flowers while they're still alive. And so I believe in that. So yeah, I cannot wait to talk about that story because he's a real one. Jay's coming in saying ACP will make airlines near useless with high-speed rail. So yeah, socialism, we can definitely do something like that with socialism. I mean, by the way, here in Florida with Brightline, that's a whole nother topic that we can talk about how Brightline is now, they're, you know, because they're not making money in this, what you call a public-private partnership. It's not being profitable. So for them, it's a travesty And I'm of the opinion that this is why it should be government owned. It should be people owned and not owned by private hands, because if you have it owned by private hands, then they're going to need profits in order to keep it up. My thing is, it's like, why have it in the hands of private businesses where they keep the prices high so that people won't even bother using it, because it's like, well, it's just going to be the same amount of money that I'm going to be spending on a car ride anyway. You got to make it worth their while, right? Also, we need actual high-speed rail, not this slow turtle BS that we have here in the United States. I mean, high-speed rail like they do in places like China and Japan, right? That type of high-speed rail. I'm talking about ones that go 250 miles an hour. That type of high-speed rail. And if we can get maglev, oh, even better. But the thing is, like, you have to be able to operate at a loss. And the only way to be able to do that is by having it operated under a government with a central planning model. You cannot do it with a government within a capitalist system, because the thing is, like, when profit is the motive, then they're not going to improve things in order to, in order to make things better just for the people, for the public good. It has to be a profit motive behind it. And so if they do make it faster, they're going to make it way more expensive, because they need to make their money, the profits behind it. And so this is why I don't think public transportation should be tied to any type of profit making. Really, the only thing it should be paying for is operations, a living, thriving wage for the workers, and maybe some squirreled away for emergency funds. That's pretty much it. That's all. And part also squared away for expansion. And that's it. We should not be doing it for profit. But I'm not going to get too much on that horse right now, because I'll go off on a huge tangent, and I know myself. We have Jacqueline coming in saying, hey, JBA, everybody, good to see you, Jacqueline. We have Holly coming in saying, hi, JB. Yesterday was Kent State. Ooh, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. All right, who else we have in here? We have Sean coming in saying, good afternoon, JB. Spirit Airlines had everybody messed up. Free Chris Smalls. Yes, free Chris Smalls. All right, let me see. Okay, so let's get into this story here. Boy, oh boy, it is going to be a few stories that we're going to get into. So let's get into the, let me put that down there. Let's get in. Oh, hang on. Let me make sure I have this thing up. I don't know why I don't have this thing up. We're live, folks. Can you tell? All right. Just want to make sure I have that going. Come on. There you go. All right. Okay. We're good to go. All right. Let's get into the thumbnail, guys, and let's get into the rest of the story that we're going to be talking about today. So, thumbnail. So later in the show, we're going to be talking about a Met Gala arrest. Met Gala, whatever you want to call it. It's full of just a bunch of not oblivious, but rich people who are flippant about the plights of others, or they just, tacitly care, but they're just there really to show off. Anyways, but yeah, you have the Met Gala arrest, right? And then we're also going to be talking about what drugs. So we're going to be talking about what happened between President Trump, Javier Milei, and the gentleman on the right above Javier Milei's face is Juan Orlando Hernandez, who is the former president of Honduras. So we'll be talking about this conspiracy here. But first, we're going to be doing a reaction to a video that I saw and I want to talk about, because we really just need to break this down about why Spirit Airlines actually ended. So in the end, we know why. And it has to do with greed. So let's get into this. So as we know, Spirit Airlines has really recently just completely collapsed and is no longer an airline. as we know it. And so Spirit Airlines was really the airline of first choice when it came to those of us who wanted a more, I'm gonna be real, we wanted cheaper flights. Why do we want cheaper flights? Well, because the economy, the real economy, is messed up. And for those of us who wanted to get away, for those of us who wanted to travel or who needed to travel by plane to get someplace a little bit faster than a bus ride, we chose Spirit Airlines. Why? Because we could afford it. And so this is why, a lot of people who are lower income or who are lower middle class use Spirit Airlines. Or let's say hypothetically, we don't make a lot of money, but we have, a family member or a loved one's graduation or wedding or something like that. Or we just want to head to a nice place just for, a getaway weekend. And we may have $200-300 to spend on a plane ticket. And then we just want to go have a weekend there and then come right back. We're not trying to spend a whole bunch of money. Is that so wrong? But Spirit overnight has shut down completely. 17,000 workers woke up that morning realizing that they no longer had a job. 17,000 workers. Now, Spirit Airlines tried to get a bailout from the United States government, a $500 million bailout. 500 million with the M, okay? But it fell through. It's kind of funny because they can bail out the big banks in the tunes of billions and trillions of dollars, but an airline that is meant for the people who want low-cost fares, that is, well, no, we can't do that. Sounds weird, right? But it is very interesting to see how a lot of people said, well, their model of charging low fares just doesn't work out. And I think part of this is identity and classism. So it's a twofold thing. And I'm gonna react to this video of this woman breaking this down. And I'm gonna be honest with you, she does a really good job of breaking it down. And I'm reacting to it because I want to expand on it. And it also is because a lot of times people are thinking, well, you just have to raise prices and it will work itself out. But it's not really that simple. So let's get into this. So the title of her video is The Real Story Behind Spirit Airlines and Why It Wasn't Saved. This is by J.S. Candid. So, and then I'll also be linking the video down in the description if you guys want to watch and show it with other people in a little bit. But we're going to be getting into this right now.
Okay, so Spirit Airlines shut down after 34 years of being in service. And when I say shut down, they didn't draw down over a couple of years or a month or even a week. No, they shut it down immediately, plunging between 15,000 and 17,000 people into unemployment. Now, I have seen all ends of the spectrum when it comes to people's reaction to Spirit shutting down. Everything from employees putting out how much the company has helped them, to people who just hate corporations in general and is glad that another corporation is suffering, to people who like them but are seriously mad at them for leaving people without work and shutting down abruptly, to people saying that that's what they get because the merger should have went through and this is on the Biden administration for not allowing the merger to go through and all of that. So
hang on. As somebody that detests corporations within this system, I do get the people who are saying, well, they detest corporations, they're glad it's shutting down. While that is good for people who are at the top, we also have to give grace and compassion to the people who are at the bottom of these companies. It is the workers that are going to suffer. The shareholders are going to be fine. The CEO, the CFO, the COO, and all those other people, they're going to be fine. What about the person who cleans the offices at Spirit Airlines? What about the person that handles the phone calls and complaints and who processes the transactions? What about the people who are workers of Spirit Airlines that work in the hangars? What about the pilots? What about the flight attendants? What about these people who are workers that have to deal with the mechanics of the plane, the aviation mechanics that Spirit employs? What about them? What about people in marketing? Well, I don't know about people in marketing. Yeah, well, we'll include them. But what about all the people who are at the bottom levels and even lower management, right? The supervisors, the department heads, right? Even the middle managers. Like, what about them? Do they even get a severance? So while I do celebrate the demise of corporations, I do not celebrate the demise of the workers. And so we have to take this we have to skate on this ice very carefully. Because if not, then we're dancing on the demise of people who we say we value. And I think that's really important too. Anyway, let's continue.
That there are so many different mindsets about this whole situation, I thought it was a good idea to go through the full context, give the full history of who this company is, what they've done, how it ended, and all of that, so that people can actually make full context educated decisions about how they want to feel about it, because details matter. So let's start with their model. So the base price of Spirit Airlines was between $45 and $48 for the flight. But they made their money with the extra things that came along with it. Paying for bags, seats, and other fees made the airlines more expensive than that base price. But people would usually pay for a 1,000-mile trip about $108 to $118. Compare that to the $200 to $300 that the other airlines were charging.
So let's break this down, okay? If you needed to, okay, let's say hypothetically, we're not talking about emergency situations, but let's say it's May, right? For many of us here in the South, especially in Florida, graduations are about to happen towards the end of this month. But for a lot of you guys further north of us, graduations are going to start happening at the beginning or close to the middle of June, right? So with that being said, if you know that you are going to be traveling because you have either a high schooler or a loved one in college that's about to graduate and you want to be there for the graduation, and let's say it's out of state, let's say you're in South Carolina and you need to travel to Ohio. I'm just picking states, right? And you wanted to travel to Ohio to be with your families in order to watch your family member graduate. Well, if it's in June, it's the beginning of May, then you have about a month to 6 weeks to get that flight booked, which is not that unreasonable of a time frame. And let's say, do you have $150 to spend on a plane ticket? Chances are you probably will or do right now. And so if you do have that, then Spirit is the flight for you. Now, of course, you would have to pay a little extra for your check bags and all these other fees. So let's max the entire round trip at $250-ish. Am I wrong? If any of you have flown Spirit, please let me know. And also take the poll. But $250, $275, right? Let's max it out there. Do you have that to be able to travel round trip from South Carolina to Ohio? If you do, great. Spirit's the one for you. But what if I doubled it? What if I doubled it to $500 to $600? Would you have that? You're going to learn that Spirit wasn't just good for people who were flying Spirit. At least an airline with this model was good for everyone. Let's continue on in her explanation. She's very brilliant at explaining this, by the way, which I appreciate from her.
Airlines made it a point to be the floor of the market when it came to pricing, which essentially created the Spirit effect. And I've seen some creators online coming out saying that this Spirit effect was not a big deal, or that they recognized it, but it didn't matter because they're still a corporation. And why are people caring about corporations and things like that? But this Spirit effect literally kept the prices low. When Spirit was in the picture at an airport doing a route, the average price for that route, for that airport, for those airlines competing with Spirit was about 21% lower than what it would be normally across the board with all airlines. When Spirit would stop serving a certain route or a certain area, the fare price for that area would usually jump about 23% overnight.
Okay, so if you're paying $250, right, for a regular flight out of a major carrier, chances are, because of Spirit, instead of it being $250, it would be between $205 and $210. Maybe just at $200 or $199, right? That's because of the Spirit effect. So according to people in economics, especially people who subscribe to the belief in capitalism, they'll talk about supply and demand and competition, right? When they talk about competition, they're talking about people who can compete in making the price lower so that it can also influence other people to lower their prices to be able to compete and grab those customers, right? This is what she's coining as the Spirit effect. So because Spirit had this baseline of being basically the lowest, well, that's a lot of people that are going to flock to that airline, even if they have higher prices to pay from different fees and things like that. They're willing to pay those fees because overall it's still going to be a net positive for them when it comes to their wallets. But unfortunately, because there's no longer a Spirit, then guess what? That weight that was pulling the price down is no longer there. It's like having, I guess it's kind of like a seesaw effect. Not necessarily a seesaw effect, but I guess in a way, it's like holding down a spring, and it's causing that tension to hold the spring down. But the problem is that if I'm holding that spring down, and it's like on a lip of something, and if I'm holding it down, if I let go, what happens to that spring? Well, the momentum hits it, and it goes and it springs and it shoots up. And so this is basically the same effect of with Spirit. And the problem is that you can't afford that, or it would be harder for you to be able to afford it outside of Spirit. I know it would be for me. So let's continue on, but that 20%, that's a lot.
Time when Spirit dropped the route between Oakland and Newark. As soon as they dropped that route, all of the other airlines doubled their fare for that same route. Not because they had to, not because their costs had gone up, but the competition to keep it low was no longer there. So they could just up the price on people, and you had to pay it if you wanted to do that route. That is the Spirit effect. And it is not as useless as a lot of people are trying to make it. It saved people hundreds, if not thousands of dollars who had to do those routes often for work or to see family. It wasn't nothing. And the thing about it is, it worked. Even if you didn't use Spirit, if you used another company, having Spirit in the picture benefited you, and you didn't have to give them a dime to do it. Their presence was enough. And that'll come into play a little later when I talk about the merger. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about the company itself.
Okay, so I'm going to share this really quick because just to give a little bit more of an explanation into what she's talking about. And so let's go here. Let's just listen in about the Spirit effect.
Spirit is closed. Here at Houston's Bush Airport, black trash bags cover the check-in terminals. And here at the baggage drop counter, there's this yellow plastic over the signs that say Spirit. It's an eerie feel here. But we're not just talking about losing an airline. We're talking about an impact that Spirit had on other airlines, one that helped flyers, just like you and me, save all kind of money. It's something called the Spirit effect. And essentially, Spirit says their prices were about 30% lower than other airlines flying on the same exact routes. And in turn, those airlines had no other choice but to drop their prices on average about 17% in order to compete with Spirit, hence the Spirit effect. Now Spirit is no longer here. So what does that mean for the Spirit effect? Here's business analyst and attorney Parag Amin.
We're seeing this already with routes that Spirit used to fly. On average, route prices are up about 14%, higher in some areas, slightly lower in others, but on average, we're seeing about a 14% bump in the overall fares as a result of Spirit going out of business.
The short and sweet of it is you should expect to pay up more, not only because of summer travel, but because Spirit Airlines is no longer there trying to tug down those ultra high fares of the legacy carriers. So what can you do to save money? The big question. We're all trying to do it. There are other ultra low cost carriers like Frontier, Avelo, Breeze. You can check out those airlines, but I must warn you, be flexible with when you want to travel, and across the board, expect to pay more.
So essentially, this is basically what she was explaining in regards to the Spirit effect. So we're going to go back into her video and we shall continue. She was talking about the company itself. So let's get into it.
Especially when it comes to diversity and what they did for the Black community. Now, this is something I think a lot of people are missing. And I think it is important to add it to the equation because Spirit prided itself on its diverse workforce. And they had a spectacular diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging program. But not only that, they made it a point to broaden their pipelines of pilots and flight attendants from marginalized groups, especially the Black community, as it engaged in organizations like the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. This is an organization where Spirit was an official sponsor, and they regularly participated in events from that organization in order to recruit Black pilots and other aviation professionals. And they also created promotional.
The note says, because I don't want people to miss it, it says, note, Spirit Airplanes never had an accident. They hired skilled professionals. Here's the crazy part, right? Remember when Charlie Kirk said that if I saw a Black pilot, I would be questioning their skills as a pilot? Remember when Charlie Kirk said that? Kind of interesting, right? But the thing is it's about the abilities and flight hours and training that pilot has. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. And yet, you have some people that would see a Black pilot and they would go, no, we can't have that. Or they'll see a female pilot and they'll be like, oh, we can't have that. Yet, at the same time, they can be just as good, if not better pilots in many different cases. Kind of reminds me of that study that was done about how patients actually recover faster with female surgeons than they do with male surgeons. I forgot the name of the study, but you guys can always Google it. But there was a study that was done that female surgeons, the outcomes of patients and recovery were better than that of having male surgeons. Interesting, right? I talked to this with a comrade of mine who's a physician, and she basically corroborated that statistic in that study. So it's not basically saying that one is better than the other necessarily, but is that with enough time, training, and resources, their immutable characteristics do not matter when it comes to being able to fly a plane or driving a car or many of the different skills. So I just want to put that out there, that even though, you know me, completely anti-capitalist, and I do not like these big corporations within the system, I do also have to acknowledge that they also were more likely to hire and retain Black and brown people to be their pilots, to be their the people who were the face of the corporation, at least, especially when it came to flying the airplanes, being the first officers, into being the flight attendants, and so on and so forth. And probably even some of the mechanics for the planes too. So just want to put that out there, because a lot of airlines probably were more slower to hire Black pilots, even though they were just as qualified.
Pathways for underrepresented professionals, with 67% of their promotions in 2023 going to people from marginalized or underprivileged groups. And they were regularly praised for their workforce looking like the communities that they served. And this extended to veterans as well, starting with their SERVE program, which they created specifically to recruit veterans, using their combat experience, using their flight hours in the military to train them and help them adapt the things that they had learned in the military to civilian aviation. The bottom line is they were doing good work, and they were trying to actually bring up marginalized communities. They were trying to actually help those who have been forgotten by many other companies, including other airlines. And
so two things could be true at the same time when it comes to this, where yes, what you're saying is true, that they were trying to help uplift people in this community, but at the same time, it's also a good marketing strategy to get people who are more lower cost, lower income, who typically are people who are Black and brown. I'm not saying that all of us, who are Black and brown are of low income, and that shouldn't be reflective of who we are personality wise, or as we are culturally, that we're always that. It's just the system is built to disenfranchise and disadvantage us more than our white counterparts, even though it does happen to our white counterparts. But what I'm saying is that they will use it as like a marketing tool. It's kind of like how Raytheon will change its logo into rainbow colors to say, well, they value diversity and they will march in the gay pride parades as long as you're willing to make weapons of war to destroy the lives of other people, including LGBTQ people abroad, right? And it's the same thing, right? They're willing to hire the people who look like me and look like her, but at the same time, it's like, okay, yeah, great, you hired us, but what's the pay rate? What are the benefits? How is it structured? Are you actually giving more to people? Are you giving us more upward mobility, or are you exploiting us just like the other airlines? It's just you're willing to have more Black faces in it. You know what I mean? So while one thing is good, it's like, okay, they're willing to hire, Black pilots and Black flight attendants, things like that. We appreciate that. At the same time, are you willing to also pay the people who make this airline run top dollar for their service? If not, then, well, you're exploiting us just like you do the poor working class white people in the other airlines too. And while, yes, having us there is nice, paying us a livable wage, it offers more dignity. So that's why I'm like, two things can be true at the same time. See what I mean there? That's why I wanted to do a reaction, break this down. All right, let's continue on.
Giving them a way forward and a pathway in when most of the time that door has been closed. So what happened? How did they fall? Many people will say, at least from what I've seen, that it started with that failed merger. But in all honesty, they were kind of struggling before that, because even though they charged very little in comparison for their fares, they still gave the same amount of benefits and things like that to all of their workers. They were not making a very big profit overhead to begin with, because that just wasn't their model. Their model was cheap flights for people. So because of that, they needed a merger to put an influx of cash into the company. So the merger that most people know about is the merger between JetBlue and Spirit. That was the merger that was not approved. But before that, there was another merger in the works, and it was a $6.6 billion merger with Frontier. Now, regulators really liked that merger idea. They liked the idea of Frontier and Spirit getting together because they had similar platforms when it came to their model, creating cheap flights for people. Had that deal gone through, there would have probably not been any problem, and Spirit would have probably been here today. But JetBlue essentially did a hostile takeover. As soon as it heard about the merger between Frontier and Spirit, they decided that they were going to bid even higher than Frontier did and try to entice them with a much larger bid. Now, this was in 2022. Now, Spirit's management said that that was a bad idea. Spirit's management did not want to merge with JetBlue. They wanted to merge with Frontier because, again, Frontier had their same business model. And
all right, so you guys following? The managers wanted to merge with Frontier, not JetBlue. Okay, I want you to hang on that into your heads. Now you're going to see the class divide within Spirit Airlines. Let's go.
It would have been much better for essentially the little guys to team up.
Mm-hmm.
However, the shareholders in Spirit did not agree with the management of Spirit. The shareholders saw dollar signs, and the shareholders outvoted the management, forsaking their deal with Frontier and going to what they thought were brighter pastures.
Y'all knew where I was going with this. You knew exactly where I was going with this. Mm-hmm. Those of you who have been watching this channel know where I go when I talk about these things. If you're new to the channel, hello, welcome, have a seat. I hope you guys have a nice snack and a stiff drink. We have to talk about these things. And so, of course, the shareholders are always going to get in the way when it comes to the needs of a company and what workers need within the business model. And they're going to come in between that because they got to get theirs first. And so shareholders saw the immediate gains, but the people who were looking long-term were the management. These are the supervisors, the managers, the department heads. They were like, yeah, no, we need to go with Frontier because if we merge with Frontier, we'd be able to have a lot more longevity. This company would stay on a lot longer. But no, they didn't. And so now Spirit is gone. What happens to the workers? Well, they don't have a job anymore. Now they're out here with the rest of us trying to compete for different jobs now. What about the people? What about the pilots? Right? They have a pilot's license. Are they going to get hired? Especially the black and brown ones. Are they going to get hired and absorbed by these other airlines? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, and let's call a spade a spade. There's a lot of people out there that have the same mind frame as people like a Charlie Kirk. As soon as they see a black pilot, they're gonna be like, I don't know about flying on this. And if they start seeing more black pilots within their ranks, they may start to switch carriers. And, you know, these big carriers, they don't like that. They don't want people to switch just because they see a different race. Because at the end of the line, at the bottom of it all, it's about the money. So if they have to be a little bit white supremacist, if they have to be a little anti-black just in order to be able to earn $1, well, that's a risk they're willing to take. instead of actually just hiring on the best pilot. See, this is the thing about people who talk about DEI. Now, don't get me wrong. I really don't have much love for DEI because number one, it really didn't benefit those of us who are black and brown and those of us who are disabled or LGBTQ or neurospicy. It doesn't really benefit us that much. It mostly went towards white women. At the same time, there is a DEI in place for white people because you're trying to cater to a certain audience because you don't want to feel the wrath of their anti-blackness or their bigotry, and you don't want those bigoted dollars to leave. So you cling to the bigotry just so that you can make that extra money. And then once you do it, then, well, you know, if a few people lose out, a few people lose out. That's just the nature of doing business. You got to follow where the trail goes. A corporation will drop the rainbow colors on a dime if it means they can get the swastika dollars instead. Because they're following the trend of whatever the money goes. If the larger population and the people with more money end up being anti-black or white supremacist or queer-phobic or whatever, they're going to go that direction. Remember Nazi Germany? What are some of the biggest companies? Hugo Boss, BMW, Mercedes-Benz. They were all in favor of the Nazi party. Walt Disney was cool with Nazis. Henry Ford was cool with Nazis. What I think Adolf Hitler was Times Person of the Year back in the 30s. Yeah. Nowadays, you'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe they actually did something like that. But back then, what do capitalists do? They go, it's like what Freddie Mercury said in Bohemian Rhapsody. Any way the wind blows doesn't really matter to me. And so that's the point when you're dealing with corporations in a capitalist system. There is no morals. It's amoral. And so this is why we see what we see today. Let's continue on.
They voted to do the merger with JetBlue. But one of the management's arguments for not doing that merger was the fact that the regulators were going to have a problem with it. And they were going to have some regulation hurdles in order to actually do that deal. Whereas with Frontier, the deal could have just been done. The shareholders wanted to take the risk, and risk they did, and it did not pay off. This was in 2024, when ultimately the DOJ said no. And the reason why they said no were a few things. One, the Spirit effect. With Spirit not being in the picture and them merging with a company like JetBlue, it would make the prices go up for everybody without that low-cost bottom floor competition. At a time when they were trying to get a hold of inflation, the prices were already too high for everything. Everyone was still recovering from COVID. Having all of the airfare prices jump up at that time would not have been a good idea. And it didn't help that internal documents from JetBlue that were accidentally leaked said that JetBlue had planned to raise the prices by 40% as soon as Spirit was removed from the equation. So the only reason why JetBlue even wanted Spirit in the first place is so that they could remove that ground floor. They could remove the Spirit effect and start.
Hang on. Now, but James, capitalism breeds competition. What competition? What competition? I don't see no competition here. Spirit is gone now. What competition? Capitalism. The goal isn't competition. The goal is monopolization. And when you have a monopoly, there's no other person to compete with. They can't go anywhere else. So whatever you charge is whatever they have to pay. And that's how it works. Spirit was the competition for all those other airlines. So then when Spirit was around, they had to compete in order to get some of those more price conscious flyers, those price conscious travelers. And now since Spirit's no longer there, they don't have to compete with them. Because now since they don't have to compete with them, guess what? Prices go up. Because now they can charge more of what they want to charge, not what they have to charge. That's capitalism. Because you need to gobble up those other companies in order to have more market share.
Start hiking up the prices 40% on consumers. The DOJ at the time saw through that ruse and protected the prices for the consumers. So they said, no, we are not going to let you take away the mechanism, the maverick, if you will, that is keeping the prices of airfare low. No, you are not allowed to raise the prices 40% when we are already dealing with a crisis in our economy. That is why the merger did not go through. And I don't say I disagree with their logic on that, but because the shareholders of Spirit decided that they wanted to be greedy as hell, Spirit was left with nothing. No influx of cash to actually help them when they were kind of sinking. So they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in November of 2024. And then they had to file again because costs had gone up due to inflation and other things.
And it says tariffs. She said tariffs. Hang on. Tariffs. And people go, oh, well, tariffs are for those other countries. It's not for us. But tariffs cannot be charged to other countries. It is charged to us in order to be able to get stuff from other countries. And so then it makes us more likely to buy from Americans. But the problem is we don't make much of anything here anymore. So they have to buy from other countries. So they're going to have to pay the tariffs. And so instead of paying the tariffs out of their own pockets, they have to pass that cost on to whom? Who? You. That's who. And so because of that, you're paying even more prices for your airfare. It gets worse. It gets worse. And we're going to find out why. Continue listening.
In August of 2025. And they were doing okay after that second bankruptcy until the prices skyrocketed for fuel after the Iran war was started. Estimates of how much they actually had to pay for fuel was about $360 million extra dollars. For a company who doesn't see a lot of profit in order to keep their prices low, that was devastating. So they asked the Bone Spurs administration if they could have a bailout.
So when people go, oh, I don't get into all that politics stuff. I don't want to get into it. You may not get into politics, but politics is definitely into you. And politics affects every single facet of your life. So next time you decide that you want to travel and you want to fly on a flight and get low-cost airfare, which you can't really get as much anymore, well, the prices are higher because of a war that's happening across the Atlantic Ocean in West Asia that was done illegally and not by declaration of war from Congress in order to be able to get a resource under the feet from people who are not our own citizens. It is not our land, but they want it for themselves. And it's not the United States government that actually wants it, it's corporations that want it. And they're using the United States government as their muscle in order to wrestle the resources from under the Iranian people's feet. And so this is what's going on right now. And also it's making a ton of money for the military industrial complex. Let's be real. And it's also strategic locations so that they can damage China. But here's the thing. That's what's wrong. And so oil, jet fuel is derived from oil. So your prices for your tickets are also up because of the war in Iran. So while you're not paying attention to politics, it's definitely affecting your very life right now. Don't be surprised if it's going to take more money in order to be able to make the mashed potatoes. Don't be surprised if it takes more money to be able, in order to be able to buy that, lettuce, those tomatoes, those cucumbers, or even to buy that chicken, that beef, that pork. Don't be surprised if all that stuff costs more, because I'm going to tell you right now, that's also affected by gas, which is derived from oil, which is also going up because of the war in Iran. And the Strait of Hormuz is closed again. So this is also what led to the demise of Spirit Airlines, the war in Iran. And so when people talk about, oh my God, we need to liberate Iranians and we need the United States to be able to liberate Iran. Well, guess what? They liberated your ass from low-cost fares. That's basically what it is. Are you happy now? Imperialism just doesn't hurt people abroad. It hurts us at home. Lord. Let's continue on, guys.
A $500 million bailout for 90% stake in the company. Essentially, the government would own Spirit Airlines, 90%, just.
Okay, so this is also very important. And people go, well, that would be terrible if the government owned an airline 90%. That would be competing with everybody else. Nobody cries about the United States Postal Service existing, though. Because you have the United States Postal Service, and then you also have private companies like UPS, FedEx, DHL, Amazon. You have all these other companies, these other parcel companies that can ship, deliver packages and mail, and yet you guys are okay with it as long as you guys continue to get your mail from the United States Postal Service. The United States Postal Service is also a corporation that is overseen and owned by the federal government. And so, and here's the crazy part. The United States Postal Service is becoming more inefficient, not because it doesn't work well. It's because they keep defunding it with death of a thousand cuts. So then they can more easily privatize it and give it over to big corporations. But if you do that, guess what? It's going to cost more money. And guess who's going to be less likely to receive the essential mail they need? The white people in rural areas, because it is not worth the money, because they do not want to operate at a what? Loss. Because you need to be able to operate at a loss in order to serve all the people, because it is a public good. So let's say hypothetically the United States actually did bail out Spirit Airlines and then got a 90% stakeholder ownership stake within Spirit Airlines. Let's say and in fact they change it from Spirit Airlines to Ameriair, right? They make the planes red, white, and blue, and it's Ameriair or AmAir, just like we have Amtrak, right? Because Amtrak is also a U.S. corporation that is owned by the U.S. federal government. So we already own trains. I think it's fair that we should have our own airline too, right? But the problem is that the United States actually did not want to do it, because if we did it, then the profit motive would not be the central dominating factor for a government-owned airline, because they don't need to make profit. Here's the thing that a lot of people, and this is why I can't stand people who go, oh, we should operate the government like we do a business. It's not a business, it's a government. Those are two different things. This is what happens when you got people who are educated fools. But anyways, here's the thing, right? If it is owned by the federal government, a currency issuer, not a currency user, a currency issuer, then therefore it doesn't need to make profit. It just needs to operate and charge fares for operations, maintenance, emergencies, maybe a little bit expansion. That's pretty much it. It doesn't really need to make money, and it just needs to make payroll. That's pretty much it. It's not that difficult. The problem is that when you have private corporations in there, then they need to make profit. That means the prices go up. And so this is why, if the United States actually controlled it, first of all, we would have to change the entire system, because having people like Trump in office, that means that even if we were to have a 90% ownership stake in Spirit Airlines, they would try to make that airline as inefficient as possible, so then they can sell it back off to a private corporation so that they can make more money in favor of corporations instead. This is what they're trying to do with so many other different corporations, right? They're trying to do it with Medicare and Medicaid. They're trying to do it with Social Security. They're trying to do it with all these other different things that we have, right? And so they don't want it, because then that means they would forcibly lower the cost for all the other airlines. And a government-owned one would actually lower airfares even more, because profit would not be the incentive. Or it would be even less incentive if they own a 90% stake, which means that there's only the group of shareholders will only have a 10% stake. So I think we have to change the system, but it would benefit, it'd be at least a net benefit in the system that we have, but they wouldn't be willing to do that. Anyways, let's continue on and finish up.
For $500 million. To put that into perspective, we have spent over $25 billion with a B on the war itself, with billions and billions of dollars in damage done to our military bases over there in the Middle East, for a war that was unsanctioned, a war we did not have to get into. Billions and billions of dollars spent in less than 3 months. But suddenly they don't have $500 million to save a company that was pulling the minority population up. This is why the details matter. Because Bonespur said that if the deal was good for the taxpayers, it would be a deal that he would be interested in doing. I have already pretty much proven in this video that that deal would have been good for the taxpayers. It would have kept our prices low. It was helping marginalized and underprivileged communities. It was helping out our veterans who usually cannot use their combat experience and their flight hours in the military to transfer to pilot hours in civilian sectors. Objectively, Spirit was actually helping the taxpayers. Even if you hate bailouts and you don't want to bail out any other companies and things like that, the reason why they needed the help matters. And Bonespurs didn't do it because he knew that there was nothing in it for him. He didn't do it because he personally couldn't own 90% stake in the company. It was the government who would have owned 90% stake in the company. And he didn't do it because of their diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging programs. He didn't do it because of how they helped the Black community and the pilots and aviators come up in the Black community. He didn't do it because he don't give a shit about veterans. That is why they didn't do it. So let's not get it twisted, and let's not be blinded by our hate for corporations. And trust me, I'm there with you when it comes to corporations, and I will call a spade in a minute when it comes to the bullshit that are corporations in this capitalist society. But this one, in my opinion, was different. And that is why it wasn't saved. And now 17,000 people, most of them people who are from underprivileged and marginalized groups, are now out of work. That is the true story of Spirit. Take that how you will.
So there's also another thing that I wanted to share. She also put in the comments, I don't know how true this is. I'm going to read it, but I don't know if there's any validity to this. I've been trying to look it up, but I haven't found anything just yet. If anybody finds anything, please let me know. However, she does say, she says, self-fact check, the 90% stake, it was the President Trump's administration idea because they wanted to use Spirit planes for the military, you know, because the Iran war is nowhere near over. And Spirit said, no, you can't have 90% and you can't use our planes that way. Because of this and Donald Trump not getting his way, they refused to bail out. Now, I don't know if that's actually true in regards to them wanting to use it, because my thing is, it's like, why would they want to use their planes if you already have all these military contractors already building the planes anyway? I mean, they wouldn't want to compete with Spirit anyway, because, I mean, they just want to be able to build those planes themselves so that they can get more of the money from the government contract. Unless those planes aren't being built fast enough, because maybe the United States isn't winning this war with Iran and they actually do need those planes. They need them to be retrofitted in order to be able to go into combat zones. Could that be it? Maybe they are trying to get around the Defense Production Act so that they can actually have more, because there's already a story out there talking about how they're looking at GM and Ford into now constructing more military equipment from the automakers. I don't know. I'm just saying it's giving desperation. It's giving swiping your card and praying to God that it actually goes through. That's what it's giving. And we're just going to have to wait and see. But yes, the issue with Spirit Airlines is really one of how, you know, the United States, they can't compete. And, you know, let me share this with you guys here before I end this segment. This is out of Al Jazeera right here. Make sure it's big enough so you guys can read along with me. It says, was the war in Iran the final blow in the collapse of Spirit Airlines? Shutdown of the budget airline after 34 years has left 17,000 staff members unemployed. So it says, experts say that a spike in aviation fuel prices from the U.S.-Israel war on Iran dealt the final blow to the struggling airline that pioneered the ultra-low-cost carrier model. The airline shut down after 34 years, left some 17,000 staff members unemployed, many passengers stranded, and raised doubts about the future of budget air travel. And so it talks about basically what she was saying a little bit earlier. And now this is also talking about, are other airlines also under pressure due to the Iran war? It says the war in Iran has disrupted global oil and gas prices, with Brent crude rising above $111 a barrel on Friday. The high crude oil prices have also caused ATF prices to rise, affecting budget airlines badly. Across the globe, airlines have been increasing prices to reflect the high ATF prices, and some have also reduced their flight operations. German airline Lufthansa said last month it canceled 20,000 flights in a bid to protect itself from soaring ATF costs. On Friday, leading Indian carrier Air India said that it increased fuel surcharges on all its flights, adding it will do 100 flights a day across its domestic and international routes. Mendirata noted that the aviation industry is on alert as airlines carrying high debt, facing fuel cost volatility, labor cost pressures, fleet constraints, and sustained pricing pressure remain exposed to the war, especially those operating through low-cost carrier model. So this is what we have. And so as far as, being able to travel, I think it's safe to say that being able to travel at lower cost is done. That era is over. And now just being able to fly and go places will now be reserved for the affluent, upper middle class, affluent, and rich. You won't be able to fly anymore. So now you're going to have to get used to booking Greyhound buses. So yeah, more difficult times are ahead. And my heart is with all the 17,000 employees that have found out they lost a job overnight. And this is why mutual aid is so important, because now we have 17,000 more people that have been added to the unemployment lines. Watch the space. All right, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody. And we're going to be moving on to the next one. But first, we are going to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon, because without them, we would not be able to have this channel. So here are the tiers, y'all. Let's get into this. So we have Mega Jaybefaunters. We have Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We also have Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And let's welcome new member, Sentient. Thank you so very much for becoming a member on Patreon. It is deeply appreciated. Also, if you guys like to support the channel, you can also do it through Venmo. I do have that linked in the description below. But some of the best ways to support the channel is either through super chats, memberships, or joining the Patreon as well. For the Patreon, I do put out the videos as soon as they're edited. I put them out, so you guys get them earlier than everybody else. But yeah, that's basically it. So you guys get it earlier. And so, yeah, thank you so very much to everybody who has contributed to the channel. It really does mean a lot. It definitely helps me in the long run. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's get into the comments in the chat. I know you guys got some things to say. I'm going to check to see if we have any Rumble rants first. Oh, okay. We definitely have a Rumble rant. Wow. Okay. Let's get into this. And also, I'll be looking at the Kick to see if we have any gifted subs as well. All right. So we have this from a non-user. Wow. Very generous Rumble rant. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. It says, "You rock, JB." Very simple, very kind and compassionate of you. Thank you. This means a lot. Definitely help you get some groceries. But he says, "You rock, JB." Thank you so very much for that. I hope you are enjoying the show. It is interesting because I wasn't going to go live today. But I hope I'm doing all right for you guys. That tea definitely did help. All right. Let's go into, let me check to see if we have any gifted subs on Kick. And we shall look there. Looks like I think we're okay on Kick. I think we're okay. All right. Thank you so very much for that. All right, let's get into the rest of the chats. Check and see if I have any super chats on here. Oh, wow. It actually grays out the ones that I've already clicked on. Oh, that's nice. Very nice, StreamYard. You guys have actually stepped up your game. I appreciate that. Okay. Edward says, JB, how is the job going along? Child, it's exhausting. I'm grateful, but it is exhausting. So yeah, and I know I've been lax on the readings. I'm gonna try to get back into that ASAP because I really want to, because I did not want to have any gaps, but you know, working does take a lot out of me. So essentially, I have two jobs. It is this job, which is basically my career, and activism, you know, whenever I can do that, and organizing, and then also working. So it's a lot. So yeah, I'm trying to do the best I can with what I got. But yeah, so and I wish I could do, you know, my channel and just do organizing full time, but the system that we live in, it is not conducive for that. But look, we have to do what we have to do in order to help out as many people as possible. So we shall march on. Thank you very much for that question. Appreciate it. I cannot wait to get to that story too. Edward also says, funny that the Trump said the administration was going to buy Spirit Airlines. I guess that the oligarchs told me not to his corporate donors. Yeah, of course they wouldn't want to, because that means I would have to force them to lower their prices, and they want that. They want those dividend checks to be as fat as possible. Bryce coming in saying, good afternoon, JB. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very much. Good to see you. Hey, Roger. He says, keep saying this comes from the 1919 Michigan State Supreme Court decision of Dodge Brothers, John and Horace versus Ford Motor Company, that established shareholder primacy. This set the precedence of the world we live in today of shareholders got to get theirs off the top and push the cons onto the government. You got to do a story on it. Yeah. Because ultimately, as much as I hate on Henry Ford, one thing that he, you know, did focus on was that he wanted his workers to be able to buy the cars that they manufactured. To him, it was stupid that they couldn't afford the cars that they manufactured for him. And I'm of the same mind. Like, if you work for a company, you should be able to afford any and everything within that company that you work for. And you should be able to squirrel away money, and it shouldn't have to take you an obscene amount of time to save for it. You know, that's like being a realtor in a certain area, and you cannot buy a home in that area that you sell houses in. And you've been a realtor for between 5 and 10 years, and you mean to tell me you still can't afford to buy a house that you sell houses in that area? You can't live in that area? It's weird to me. You know, that's like working in a really expensive restaurant and you making food for that restaurant, but you can't afford to buy a meal there. Right? That's wild to me. That doesn't make any sense. But unfortunately, because the laws, and I explained this in a live stream before, was it last live stream? About the fiduciary responsibility of shareholders, and that is law. That is what part of the law of the land. And so this is the same thing in regards to shareholders with Spirit. So yeah, that is a worthy show to get into. That's more of a deep dive I really should get into. But thank you very much for that, Roger. Yeah, that's out of 1919. And yes, he says nationalized or cooperatized, the entire airline industry. Yeah. Kick Bounty says, okay, no, never mind that. Let me see here. Oh, Hey, Jacqueline says, I can see Trump being that vindictive. They may not have needed those planes, but they might have needed the excuse. You got a point there. You got a point there. Thank you so very much to Unemployed Scholar, says solidarity. And then out of Rumble, Mary Ploppin says, muy generoso. Thank you so very much for that. All right, guys, I want to make sure I stay on time. So we are going to get into the next subject. So this is going to be an interesting one. We're going to be talking about con men. Con men. Let's get into it. All right. So what drugs? We're going to get into this. This is a story that I think is really important. Oh my God, why does Javier Milei look like that? Anyways, we're going to be getting into this story about Javier Milei, Juan Orlando Hernandez, and Donald J. Trump. So we're going to get into the story. This one is going to be very interesting, and it's going to be ironic as hell. But we're going to get into this. We're going to get into conspiracy. So let's get into this story here. So fake news. It's all fake news. It's fake news. We're going to distribute the fake news. We're not going to allow them to distribute fake news. I don't know. We're probably going to get fake news everywhere, and then we're going to make it. We're going to make Latin America great again. We're going to make it great again. Anyways, so this is what Donald Trump is planning on doing. He wants to distribute the fake news now. You heard that right. He wants to distribute the fake news, and he's going to use Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, and a drug kingpin, Juan Orlando Hernandez, former president of Honduras, to do it as well. So there was a leak, I tell you, that just came forth. I am going to share this first. Because I want to make sure that I get this. I want to give credit to where credit is due. Let me see here. Yes, I want to give credit to where credit is due because I found this story from Ben Norton of Geopolitical Economy Report. And I want to give him credit for this because I appreciate Ben Norton here. I cannot wait. I'm going to try to have him on. I would love to be able to have a conversation with him. He's brilliant. But Ben Norton shared this story, and I'm going to be getting into this even deeper. I'm just going to read the first paragraph, and then we'll get into it. It says, bombshell, leaked audio recordings prove Argentina's libertarian president, Javier Milei, is conspiring with the drug lord Juan Orlando Hernandez, the drug trafficking former dictator of Honduras, whom Trump freed from prison. So we're going to get into the story. And so I actually have the article where Ben Norton shares the link from. And we're going to read straight from the source itself. Ben Norton does a really good job of just basically condensing the news here, but I want to read it straight from the article myself. So we're going to be getting into that as well. So let me share this one. This is a la jornada. And so, yes, we're going to translate. Thank God for that. And make sure this is big enough. We can do a little bit more. All right, perfect. So this is out of La Jornada. It says, Milei contributed $350,000 to a campaign to discredit Sheinbaum and Petro. So it's Gloria Sheinbaum, which is the president of Mexico, and Gustavo Petro, who is the president of Colombia, right? Both left-wing presidents, not as far left as I would like for them to be, but they're further left, and they are doing some good things for the workers in their respective countries. But let's get into this. This is out of Buenos Aires. It says Argentina President Javier Milei allegedly contributed $350,000 to form a regional communications team to launch a media campaign against the presidents of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, and Colombia's President Gustavo Petro. According to audio recordings of a conversation between the former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, and current Honduran authorities, which caused a strong reaction in Argentina. It says the audios from WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegram are part of a detailed journalistic investigation published into Diario Red America Latina, directed by Spaniard Pablo Iglesias, and the Honduras Gate portal notes the paper in Pagina 12. It says, Hernandez was arrested for drug trafficking in the United States in 2024, sentenced to 24 years in prison, and pardoned by Donald Trump despite being one of the most important drug kingpins in the region. So let's stop here for a second. What drugs? What drugs? You know, it's funny how Juan Orlando Hernandez was indicted and was a drug kingpin in Honduras. And he was serving 24 years in prison for being a drug kingpin here in the United States. And yet he was pardoned by Trump. But the Trump administration, the Trump regime, illegally went into Venezuela, captured President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, and shipped them off to New York and have them enduring a trial over drug trafficking, which President Nicolas Maduro is not guilty of. There's no evidence of him being a narco-terrorist, and yet he's being pursued. But Juan Orlando Hernandez, who has been proven to be a drug lord, is now being pardoned by Trump and now working with Javier Milei in order to do some conspiracy around Latin America on behalf of the United States. This is the irony. This is the hypocrisy. It was never about the drugs. They don't care about the drugs. They care about dismantling anything that is worker-centered, whether it's here in the United States, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in other places around the world, especially in the global South, where you have a huge upswell of more left-wing economic principles and thought. If it exists, they're trying to squash it because they know that the people who suffer the most are looking. They're searching right now for something better. And so this is why he loves to have Javier Milei there, because essentially Argentina now is a U.S. vassal state. Javier Milei is basically a manager for the United States. He's managing Argentina. And so because he's doing that, Argentinians are suffering right now. And we'll get into that. There's an article that I want to read that's going to be talking about that. But it's just wild to me how, you have Donald Trump never really cared about drug trafficking. And how could you expect him to? Because you literally talk about the United States, the same United States that actually has the CIA that imported crack cocaine into black neighborhoods in order to destabilize the neighborhoods here, as well as to go after the left, to get us hooked on substances so that they have an excuse to put us in prison. Yeah. I mean, this was brought out by President Nixon's domestic policy advisor, John Ehrlichman. In fact, let's continue reading, but then we'll get into that article by John Ehrlichman. So it says, in one of the audio recordings, Hernandez stated that as part of that group or continental entity, Milei's role is important because he contributes thousands of dollars to the construction of those fake news sources. Quote, we're going to set up a cell, Mr. President, he's talking about of Honduras, Nasri Asfora, from here, from the United States, so they can't track us there in Honduras. We're going to be like a Latin American news site, the newspaper highlighted. says the audios also reveal that Hernandez has the task of attacking and eradicating the cancer of the left there in Honduras and throughout Latin America, for which he needs to organize and install in the United States a digital journalism unit, which will be managed by someone else from there, from the team of the President of the United States. And I'm pretty sure that National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, will be integral as part of this entire apparatus, because Marco Rubio is really trying to establish U.S. supremacy in Latin America. And recording from January 30th, Hernandez claims that he was, quote, on a call with President Javier Milei, and it was successful. Very, very good. And I believe that at this point, we can do great things for all of Latin America. There are cases coming against Mexico. There are cases coming against Colombia, and most importantly, against Honduras in the case against the Zelaya family, end quote. On the same day, another conversation was leaked with which Hernandez sends a message to Vice President of Honduras, Maria Antonieta Mejia, telling her that he needs, quote, to have that liquidity because we are going to set up an office here with the support of some Republicans to be able to attack and eradicate the cancer of the left from here in Honduras and throughout Latin America, end quote. So it said, again, he points out that he sent messages to President Asfora, to whom he indicated that he was able to speak with Milei. And another great friend of ours from Mexico is also supporting us regarding the issue of Mexicans. We're quite ready and hoping that this will move more forward strongly. So the former Honduran president, Hernandez, Trump's protege, claimed his pardon was secured thanks to, quote, money contributed by a group of rabbis. Hang on. So Juan Orlando Hernandez claimed his pardon was secured thanks to money contributed by a group of rabbis, which is why everything he does is in favor of the United States and Israel to guarantee their control of the region. And he says, and above all, to guarantee a legal framework that benefits the U.S. and Israel and Israeli artificial intelligence companies. So it gets deeper, y'all. Why would Zionists be so interested in pardoning a drug trafficking kingpin? Anyone? Yep. Drink your water, people. But the thing is isn't that interesting? How Zionists are trying to take over Latin America. Sound like that Greater Israel project is more expensive than we thought. So let's continue on. Whew, this is deep, y'all. This is really deep. Let's continue. It says it was at Trump's behest that the team was formed. Trump's behest, following the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro Moros and his wife Celia Flores on January 3rd. At that time, Milei ordered a campaign against the Venezuelan leader to be launched with a special protocol offering the United States that Maduro will be arrested and extradited to Argentina. Milei's popularity is declining daily, and polls indicate that his popularity is at its lowest level in recent memory. It says currently facing demands for parliament regarding the series of land and air military maneuvers taking place in the Argentine Patagonia, part of whose territory has been handed over to foreign companies and military to the Southern Command in addition to the denunciation of the presence of 17,000 Israeli soldiers in that region. In addition to the denunciation of the presence of 17,000 Israeli soldiers in that region. Why are Israeli soldiers in Argentina? Anyone? Why are they in Argentina? Yeah, it is weird to me too. So let's share something here, because Argentinians are suffering right now, and it is because of what the United States has done. And also, let's just go back here, because this story reminds me of what John Ehrlichman said. He was the domestic policy advisor to Richard Nixon. And it says Nixon's advisor admits war on drugs was designed to criminalize Black people. So this was 10 years ago. This article was written. Let's get into this. So to the left is John Ehrlichman, and that is Richard Nixon, former president of the United States. So it says, after President Richard Nixon declared a war on drugs in 1971, the number of people incarcerated in American jails and prisons escalated from 300,000 to 2.3 million. Half of those in federal prison are incarcerated for drug offense, and 2/3 of those in prison for drug offenses are people of color. Disproportionate arrest, conviction, and sentencing rates for drug offenses have devastated communities of color in America. Between 1981 and 2011, arrests of African Americans for violent property crimes fell, but rose dramatically for drug offenses. As the Washington Post reported, African Americans are far more likely to be arrested for selling or possessing drugs than whites, even though whites use drugs at the same rate and are more likely to sell drugs. And the new article from Harper's Bazaar magazine, journalist Dan Baum reports that the President Richard Nixon's domestic policy chief, John Ehrlichman, admitted that the war on drugs was designated to have precisely this impact on the Black community. In 1994, Mr. Ehrlichman said, you want to know what this was really about? And he went on. So here is the explanation, guys. And think about what's happening between Donald Trump, Javier Milei, and Juan Orlando Hernandez. Now, John Ehrlichman says the Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies. One, the anti-war left, and two, Black people. You understand what I'm saying? Hang on. Let's stop here for a second. Anti-war left and Black people. Let's just dissect this for a second. Why would Black people be on that list? Was it just because we're Black? What was happening in the late 60s and early 70s? Who did we lose in the late 60s and early 70s? We lost people like, everybody talks about Martin Luther King Jr., but what about Malcolm X? What emerged in the late 60s and early 70s? What emerged after that? Was it not the Black Panther Party for defense? Mm-hmm. Who surrounded the California state capitol with their rifles in hand to make demands of the governor of California? It was the Black Panther Party, exercising their Second Amendment right at the state capitol of California. Who was the governor at the time? Ronald Reagan. And who was president? Richard Nixon. Tricky Dick, they used to call him. And so they saw that and they said, oh my God, the Black people, they are getting militant. They are getting organized. And they saw the Black man as, wait, They're getting too organized. We got to dismantle them. How do we do that? Well, one of the drugs that they were using first was heroin. They were bringing heroin in order to be able to disrupt the Black family. Because they know if you break up the family, then you break up the community, right? So they did that. They also brought in drugs. The CIA actually admitted this. You can look it up. That they brought in drugs like crack cocaine in order to infiltrate our neighborhoods, in order to get us hooked, in order to break down our families, so then we could not organize more effectively, because we were organizing not just on race, but also class too. Because they saw the Rainbow Coalition. They saw it with their own eyes. They saw that white people were looking at their bigotry with clear eyes and going, okay, this isn't working for us. We're going to toss this aside because, hey, that ain't working for us. We're seeing what the Black folks are doing. They're also coming after us because we're poor and we're white. All right, let's unite with them. And then the Latinos did the same thing, whether it was the Young Patriots or the Brown Berets. They also saw, hey, this isn't working for us. We need to unite, just like the Black Panthers. Guess what? Then you have the Rainbow Coalition. That means you had all these different groups. Yeah, some of their missions and some of their goals of the groups were slightly different, but overall, they have an overarching theme of class solidarity. But they also had their theme of, you have Black liberation, you had liberation for people who were white that were also under the yoke of the rich elites. And then you also had the Latinos, who also, some of them were also immigrants, and they also had that fight as well. And so we all saw mutually our different plights as well as our shared plight together. And so we united groups to groups. And so there was a system of collaboration. But they needed to break it up. And who was the strongest in that point? It was the Black community. Why were we so strong? Because we were the ones who were struggled the longest. Besides the Native Americans, we had the longest struggle. And so we were more solidified in that way. And so they broke us up in order to make sure that there was no unity. And so, what did he say? You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war, which is the Vietnam War, right? Right now we have the Iran War, but at the time it was the Vietnam War, or Black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies, and a lot of hippies were on the left, with marijuana, and Blacks with heroin. See, this is before the crack epidemic. And then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. Now, criminalizing it meant that you would arrest particularly it was a lot of men, because, you had a lot of men that were losing their jobs. And so they feel like they need to self-medicate, because ultimately, healthcare costs were way too high. So instead of going and getting any type of help through psychologists and psychiatrists and counselors, well, they would self-medicate. Well, what was available? It was marijuana and heroin. And that's what happened. And that broke families apart. And they knew they could do it that way. So if you put them in a disenfranchised position and they have nowhere else to turn to, then they self-medicate. And they wanted those jobs to be lost, just so that they can depress them even more. And that's how you disrupt the communities. And then he continues, says we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. What are they doing in Latin America now? And by the way, Black people exist in Latin America. They pretty much damn near wiped out all the Afro-Argentinians. I mean, Cuba's chock full of Afro-Cubans. Brazil has a ton. The highest amount of Black people outside the United States is Brazil and in the Americas. And so anti-Blackness is everywhere. And a lot of Black people are more inclined towards the left because of our shared history of oppression. And we see, hey, that's not right. We got to fight against that. And so the likelihood of us suffering, because it's like I said in the tweet last week, I didn't become a communist because I was influenced by communists. I became a communist because of capitalism and what its effect has done on me. And I didn't like it because I saw no compassion. I saw no logic. There was no reasoning into it. It was just greed. And so they know that if that happens to somebody like me, that happens to many, many others. And they know the Black radical tradition. And so they're doing the same thing in Latin America. And so that's what it reminded me of. And so this is why I think it's so important that we focus on what happened in our past and seeing how it affects us now. History may not repeat itself, but it damn sure rhymes. So I shared that to share why it is so important that we focus on this story, because this is what they're doing. And the thing is like Juan Orlando Hernandez, being a drug lord, he's bringing in drugs and bringing in crime, and yet he gets pardoned. But yet the person who's on the left, who is stopping the drugs, stopping the crime, by uplifting or trying to uplift the people so that they won't have to commit crimes of desperation and lack of opportunity, he's being vilified and being pegged as a drug lord because they need him to be vilified. But the drug lord that's actually doing all the crimes, they need him to look like he's the innocent one. And it's true, because Trump actually really did pardon him. Trump pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez. Let's show you here. It says Honduras ex-president sentenced to 45 years for drug trafficking to the United States. That's him. Ex-Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez on Wednesday was sentenced to 45 years in a U.S. prison for his drug trafficking and weapons conviction. Hernandez, once embraced by U.S. officials who leaned on him for efforts to stem northern-bound migration, is one of the several leaders of the Latin American countries who have faced accusations of corruption. He was a president from Honduras from 2014 to 2022. Was extradited to the United States on federal charges in April of 2022. He was convicted on March 8th after the 3-week trial. Authorities say that since at least 2004 and throughout his presidency, Hernandez was the center of one of the largest, most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. The DOJ says Hernandez facilitated an importation of more than 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S. while working with heavily armed and dangerous criminals. Several Hondurans have been extradited for similar charges, including 2 major drug kingpins who testified Hernandez received bribes from them or gave them instructions for money laundering. Tony Hernandez, a former Congress member and brother of Juan Orlando Hernandez, was sentenced to life in prison on drug charges in 2021. The ex-president's predecessor, Porfirio Lobo Sosa, also linked to drug trafficking groups and is on a U.S. list of corrupt past and present officials. So this is Juan Orlando Hernandez. And that's who Donald Trump pardoned. And yet he wanted to go after Nicolas Maduro for what Juan Orlando Hernandez actually did. Now, I do want to share this as well, because this is how bad it is in Argentina. Because they're talking about, oh my God, they want to go after the left, but they're not going after the poverty. You're going to go after the left, but you ain't even going after the poverty. Let's take a look. This is what the people in Argentina are doing. Why Argentine households are substituting beef with donkey. This is not a joke. This is not a joke, y'all. It says Argentinian beef prices trajectory in 2026 has crossed a threshold that even the country's worst historical inflation crisis did not reach. Beef has doubled the inflation rate for 12 consecutive months. Per capita consumption is at a 20-year low. The Real Times, the Latin America financial news outlet, reports that donkey meat is now commercially viable as a beef substitute in Patagonia because of the economics of the traditional protein have moved beyond household affordability. Imagine living here in the United States, and prices have gotten so extreme for beef that you now have to buy donkey meat instead. You have to eat donkey burgers. Yeah, it's that bad. How's that for anarcho-capitalism? It is, and yet to them, the left is the problem. Meanwhile, you have people that can't even afford beef. And they're spending millions of dollars in order to millions of dollars in order to try to create some fake news Latin American network so that they can crush the left. Meanwhile, people are starving. What happens to the $40 billion that Donald Trump gave you, Milei? You can spend that on the people? No. Oh, silly me. You're spending some of that money on Juan Orlando Hernandez instead. On a drug trafficker, instead of actually making sure that your people can actually eat and be housed. But this is the con and the conspiracy. This is what's happening, and they're trying to do this and crushing the left there. And if you are against undocumented immigration, do not be surprised if we start to get an influx of Argentinian immigrants. Don't be surprised if they start coming here. Because everybody's like, oh my God, the Venezuelans and the Mexicans. But you guys are going to start crying about Argentinians. Who are all these white Latinos coming here? Well, these Spanish-speaking, German-looking people. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. But the problem is ultimately, this is, when I say that the problem is systemic, its tentacles are reaching across the globe. And that's why the system needs to be stopped here. There needs to be a blockage within this within this figurative cardiovascular system of capitalism. You got to block some of the vessels. Mayday just passed. I hope that gave you guys some perspective. But yes, the attacks are not just coming against us here in the Imperial Core. The attacks are going against our fellow workers south of us. And if we really want to have a nation that is more free, we also cannot accept oppression that our nation is doing in other places. All right, everybody, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. All right, so let's get into the chats and let's get into Kick first. Check on that. I saw that story. I was like, what? These people are crazy. They are redonkulous. What is that? Okay. Looks like we're good on Kick. Let's go on to see if we have any more Rumble rants. Okay. We do have comments there, so I'll highlight those in a minute. All right. Let's get into this. Oh. Let me see. Roger says, let's do a follow-up story going on with Maduro. That actually is pretty good. I should do a follow-up story. The problem is the United States is, from last I heard, they're not giving him the resources to be able to properly represent himself because they don't want him to be able to represent himself. They want to put him away in prison. It's basically a kangaroo court. They don't want him to be able to be properly represented because they just want to have him as a bad guy, when in reality, he's actually not a bad guy. He's not perfect. Let's be real. Like, none of them are. But the thing is, like, all the things he's been accused of is not true because the United States just needs a boogeyman so that they can take over somebody else's land. And while I have solidarity with all the workers, I also realize that undocumented immigration is really a tool used by corporations to use these people who are migrating here undocumented in order to use them as wage slave labor even more than they would us, because they're undocumented and they can abuse them any way how they can. And then it's also a way to undercut us so that we'll accept more exploitation than we would allow, because they don't want us, because essentially Americans are more expensive. So they rather do undocumented people because they're cheaper and they can just get rid of them without any, like, if they, there's a story about how, was it a lady or a gentleman? I think it was a lady. Yeah, it was a lady who hired undocumented immigrants to do either lawn work or roofing. I think it was lawn work. It might have been lawn work. But when it came time for them to finish and for her to pay, she called ICE on them so she wouldn't have to pay. That right there, that is the United States. Bring them in, have them do work, and then when they actually want their fair pay, then, all right, well, we're going to deport you. We're sending you back. And you're not getting paid for what you just did. That's what they're doing. And here's the crazy part. And people go, well, they're the ones taking our jobs. And they're not taking your jobs. They're being given it because they're more easily exploitable. And it's the big corporations. That's what it is. And so, and the crazy part about it is, a lot of people don't think about this, but a lot of people that are coming here, they actually didn't really want to come here. They came here out of duress. They didn't come here because they just really want to. And a lot of times our country does sanctions. And yeah, people will go, well, they came here for economic opportunity. It's like, yeah, the economic opportunity is because their country is under sanctions. Their country is being oppressed by this one. People go, well, they should be able to pick better leaders. The problem is, it's not them that's picking their leaders. The United States is the one that's picking their leaders. Let's go back to Chile. They had a great leader, Salvador Allende, but they ended up with Pinochet. How? They had somebody that's somewhat decent in Brazil. They had Lula da Silva. But guess who got there? Bolsonaro. How did that happen? They had Evo Morales, but then they tried to coup him. Thankfully, they didn't win in Bolivia, but they tried. They're trying it in Cuba right now. They want to put somebody else there. And so that's the thing. Like, they do put in leaders that they actually want, but the United States interferes when there's leaders that the people actually want. And so then when the leaders that they don't want end up there, well, then things go down even further down the tube. So they're like, you know what? Things are getting really bad here. I have to go. Like in Honduras, like how many people had to leave because, these drug lords were recruiting their young people. So they had to leave. They had to flee out of fear. And they came to the United States from Honduras. And they're not just coming here, right? They're going to other countries too. A lot of times, this is the last country that they came to that they didn't want to go to. Some of them go to other countries before they come here. Some of them go to Mexico and they don't want to go further north. But then Mexico kicks them out. And then they come here. Some of them go to other countries first because they know what the United States is like. But unfortunately, they get kicked out of there and they have to come here. And so a lot of times, they want to stay home. They want to be near their families. They want to be near their ancestral land. But the United States is doing is forcing them away and forcing them to come here to be exploited. And then we get undercut because they are more exploitable than we are. It's a nasty trap that this system sets up. A very nasty trap. It's ridiculous. That's why I feel for, my, immigrant fellow workers, and I feel for my Black American brothers and sisters, and also my fellow Americans. I feel for all of us. That's why this system needs to go. Bryce says, we're not doing that. I don't get this context. But I'll catch on. Roger says, the U.S. federal trial of former Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife Cielo Flores has been delayed again, with next hearing postponed until June 30th. Gosh. What happened to the right of a speedy trial? That is not speedy. Edward says drugs have always been a money-making opportunity for the U.S. by the CIA. Narcissists like Trump will always use scapegoats like Maduro as drug traffickers because Maduro would not play ball. Yeah. In fact, drug trafficking actually dropped like a rock when Hugo Chavez took over, and Nicolas Maduro carried on Hugo Chavez's policy. This is why it is extremely hard to get drugs like that in Venezuela. Yep. Cobra Commander says Marco Rubio, DeSantis, and Mommy Tulsi have been sending millions of dollars to build anti-communist movements. Yep. And says Trump's protege, so like dead rat. An unalived Mickey Mouse. Ha ha! Oh my God. Bad Wolf, good to see you. Says because it's cocaine in the Trump regime. I can't read the last bit, but maybe some of them do. I don't know. Cash Patel definitely looks like he has some fun. Oh my God. Mary Poppins says they hate black intellectuals. That's for damn sure. We carrying signs now says every accusation is actually a confession equals God bless America. All right. Mary Ploppins says we won't even get donkey meat. They have been working on clone meat for decades, not to mention 3D printing and impossible foods which use absorbed fetal tissue. Oh my God. That's what? That's weird. What in the world? So many good points. The Auspicious says, Confessions of an Economic Hitman lays it all out. Take a loan from the IMF or the CIA. Jackals will remove you. Yeah. The IMF and the World Bank, man. Them jokers are vicious, man. Ooh. Netflix says, heads up, JB, look up Bioceres. It's an Argentinian company trying to push growing GMO wheat in the United States. The thought is it isn't meat for American consumption, but Japanese and South Korea. Yeah. Some people are saying that anybody who is on food stamps shouldn't be able to get meat. Like, the hell was wrong with you? Yeah, it says the GMO wheat just has a higher tolerance towards surviving spraying or pesticide. Ironically, this is the case. It's not glyphosate. I figure you find that news interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. My gosh. Whew. All right. Let's get into the final. Let's get into the final one, because this one's going to be. I'm proud of him, but I'm also hoping he's okay, because I'm rooting for him. And I just want to share this. And I also have a video to share afterwards that's more positive, that I think somebody like Chris Smalls would actually, if he could attend both and then see that one afterwards, I think he would have attended if he didn't get arrested. But we're going to get into this now. So, of course, we talked about, we know why Spirit Airlines went down. It's because of capitalism and monopolization. Then we talked about what drugs. We talked about Javier Milei, Donald Trump, and Juan Orlando Hernandez. But now we're going to talk about the Met Gala arrest. Let's get into this. Let's talk about our homie and comrade Chris Smalls, arrested. So the Met Gala was yesterday, and it was a star-studded event. It was helped and planned by Amazon CEO and billionaire Jeff Bezos, and it was a huge hubbub of a lot of different, very rich, very wealthy celebrities, and hundreds and millions of dollars of clothes and jewelry, and they were surrounded by cameras walking down a red carpet because they felt like they were the leaders of the world. But someone someone said they need to know that they are the people who turn a blind eye to the real suffering of people in the United States. So I want to share this first because this is important. I want to show you guys what Christian Smalls has said recently. And then I also want to share with you guys what happened at the Met Gala. So I think this is right before the Met Gala. And so I want to give a shout out to Chuck Modi for sharing this video because I think this is spot on by Chris Smalls. But shout out to Chuck Modi for this one. He quotes Chris Smalls by saying Amazon is heavily invested in this genocide. They've invested $7.2 billion in Project Nimbus. He says, we're going to talk about Chris Smalls' violent arrest tonight by NYPD at the Met Gala. Let's have a full convo that includes Jeff Bezos, ICE, and Chris Smalls in his own words. So let's just share just some of this. So he's going to be talking about the Met Gala.
What's going on, Jeff? Remember me, the fired Amazon worker that you signed off on the smear campaign, calling me not smart or articulate, but you also said to make me the face of the whole unionizing efforts against Amazon. Amazon is heavily invested in this genocide. They invest $7.2 billion into Project Nimbus, a project that is being used to fund and power the technology being used to surveil and target innocent Palestinians. Also, we all know that Amazon has ties to ICE. They are powering ICE devices. Now you're going to have the Met Gala where you're going to be surrounded by all these elites and billionaires and A-listers when you have poverty right outside on the streets. We got to remind ourselves that there's more of us than there is of them. And when we fight back every time, we win. Billionaires shouldn't exist. Billionaires, they got to go.
Bars right there. Chris Smalls. Brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate you here. I'm telling you, I appreciate him so much for this one. You know, it's just, we got to go. We got to do it one more time.
Another one.
Yeah, let's do another one. Just this point right here.
This when you have poverty right outside on the streets, we got to remind ourselves that there's more of us than there is of them. And when we fight back every time, we win.
There's more of us than there are of them. Are you listening? Are you applying what you are hearing? I hope you are. Chris Smalls isn't just talking to Jeff Bezos. He's talking to all of us on that one. So I want to remind everybody who Chris Smalls is and what he has done. So one of the things that he did since the Amazon labor union was formed is he actually, first, I think the Democrats thought that they could, they could, use him. While some of us, and I'll include myself in this, I was kind of holding my breath when I saw this happen. I was like, what is he doing? Brother, what are you doing? Chris Smalls was trying to be fair, and in doing so, he saw how the sausage was made. So let's show this first, and then we will get into the rest. And so some people gave him flack for this, but I think he needed to see for his own two eyes how the sausage was made. And so this is why he's as strong as he is now. This is back in 2022. It says Biden meets with Amazon labor union at the White House. So here's Chris Smalls meeting with Biden. This is the same guy that they arrested at the Met Gala yesterday, shaking hands and meeting with Joe Biden at the White House. And he basically wanted to see what Joe Biden would do for the people who are trying to unionize a warehouse in Amazon. Of course, did Joe Biden do anything for them? No, he didn't, because Joe Biden basically gets his money from the bribers that bribed Trump too. Okay? And that opened Chris Small's eyes. It didn't take him long. And so because of that, because of who Chris Smalls is, and my respect for him has been growing ever since. And so I want to share as well this too, because I think this is also really important. Make sure I have that there. So I want to go into just to share with you guys a little bit of who Chris Smalls is. And you don't have to look too far. Just go into his YouTube page. I'm sorry, not YouTube page. Twitter page. And let's go here. So he actually wrote a book. It says, when the revolution comes, a fight for the future of the working class, right? So he actually has a book that's coming out. So he was the first Amazon labor union leader in the union, or first Amazon labor union in the United States. And so here's him speaking with Parliament. Says Chris Smalls, the worker who took on Amazon and won, reminds his power doesn't come from wealth. It comes from people who organize and act. Nothing changes if we do nothing. Solidarity is action. Let's just share with you guys who Chris Smalls is. So let's go here.
And when people ask me, how the hell did you organize against a $2.2 trillion company and the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, who was making $13 billion a day, $9 million an hour, $5,000 a second? The answer is simple. The answer is actually in here in this room right now. The answer is the power of people when we come together. There's no amount of money in the world that can stop the power of people when we come together. But you know what will change something? Direct action. And starting a revolution, and the revolution starting with yourself. So we all need to do more, because the worst thing we could do right now is nothing. When you leave here today, don't just listen to our words. Ask yourself, remind yourself who really has the power, and that's the people. The people will always rise above. Power to all people, and solidarity forever. Thank you.
So that's who Chris Smalls is. Let's continue on just to share with you guys a little bit more. He actually recently went to Cuba as well. So he went to Cuba to help with mutual aid in Cuba. I think this is his second time in Cuba. He actually went to Cuba before. A lot of people don't know that, but he actually went to Cuba before. And he came back a changed man. Like, he was organizing and trying to fight for solidarity with the workers, but he became militant when he came back from Cuba. And my respect for him grew even further once he came back, because I saw with my own two eyes how he was developing. And so it's brothers like this that I'm like, come sit with me at the table. Let's break some bread. Right? Let's have some coffee, have some tea. Let's just Let's chat. Let's have, talks about what inspired you. What was some of the biggest lessons you've ever learned? What are some of the greatest victories? What are some of your fears? What are things that you want to accomplish in the next, year, 5 years, 10 years, when it comes to organizing the people? And I'm saying all this because I hope to be as effective as Chris Smalls. I hope to be that one day. I don't think I'm there yet. I'm trying in my own way, but I respect him for that. Let's continue on. So he went to Cuba as part of the bunch of people who went. Here is him speaking in Cuba. I'm laying all this out because I want people to realize who he is and not just some, hang on, let me enlarge myself. I want people to see who he is and not just some protester, some random guy that was trying to get into the Met Gala and protest. This isn't just some random guy. This is Christian Smalls, Amazon labor union leader that organized to help the workers in Amazon, even though he doesn't even work for Amazon anymore. They literally fired him so that they, even those still who still work at Amazon, can actually earn a living wage and have power within the workforce. And he's also building worker solidarity wherever he goes. And so that's why I wanted to share this, because I'm setting this up to show and to humanize him, because the outlets will not do it. We have to do it. And also, real talk, let me be real with you. Let me keep it a buck. Let me keep it a bean. He's a black man. And let's be real, people are going to give him less credence because he's a black man. Because he wears shades. Because he got tattoos. Because he may wear a fitted cap or bandana. Because he got gold in his mouth. They're going to discount him. Let's be real. Let's be real. Even some on the left are going to discount him based on appearances. I'm going to call a thing, baby. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. We black here all day. So that's the thing. That's also I want to point out too. Because some people are going to look at Christian Smalls and think to themselves, oh, he doesn't really look like somebody we should be listening to. Why? This is why decolonizing our minds is so important, y'all. Because some of the greatest revolutionaries that we will ever have in this new millennium are probably going to be black dudes wearing shiesties or having gold in their mouth and tattoos and wearing freeform dreads. Those may be some of the greatest revolutionaries that we will ever have. And those are going to be some of the dudes that have the most compassion and the most care and love for the people. Or it could be some white dude with a beard that has a bunch of tattoos that dresses punk. You never know. They're not going to look the part that you think that a revolutionary would. And that doesn't matter. What matters is in here and in here. That's what matters. And we got to focus on that. So I want you to see past the aesthetics and look deeper. That's one of the reasons why I have to humanize him. Because I will not allow somebody to dehumanize or to minimize the impact that he has just because of some dumb, stupid thought about his aesthetics. Let's continue on. Let's show.
Everybody understands that the illegal blockade is the reason why we're here. We had over 130 organizations from around the world, over 600 plus people, and over $500,000 of donations. And we still got a flotilla on the way that'll arrive tomorrow, hopefully the day after. And actually, what we want to really express is that these people should have the freedoms and the liberties as us Americans do at home. They shouldn't be going through these inhumane conditions. And for those who have questions about Cuba being under a dictatorship, we need to debunk that. Right now, the people understand that donations, when they come to the island of Cuba, they are met by the people. Every donation will be handed directly to the organizations that we partnered up with. The people have a check and balance list where they receive a donation, they check it off, and they understand that they cannot receive multiple donations. So it's an equal, fair system. People of Cuba, we understand that you're going through tough times, but we want to say we love you. We're here in solidarity, and we're going to remain strong, remain resilient, because that's what your history has taught us. And we got to free Cuba just like we need to free Palestine. Love and solidarity. Power to all people.
Yeah. This is who they arrested at the Met Gala. He was on a flotilla and he went to Gaza to try to give aid to the people in Gaza. He was there. He got beat up by the IDF. Here's him in Cuba. He got beat up by the IDF for trying to help out the Palestinian people. And so this is who Christian Smalls is. This is him with the kids in Cuba. Chris love the kids. You know what I'm saying? He did this with the kids in Gaza too. He does this every time he goes. Very compassionate, very brilliant guy. And so this is why I wanted to humanize him, because that is important, right? And I think we need to harp on that. Even, socialists who are from Ireland, shout out to all y'all in Ireland that stand with the marginalized people. Y'all some real ones out there in Ireland. So I just want to share that with y'all. Okay, now, what happened? Let's get into this because I kept you guys on long enough. So I'm going to share this. So we're going to share 2 videos. Well, technically 3. So I want to share the first one in regards to Christian Smalls. So the Met Gala happened, and let me show you guys this. So I want to share first just people talking about the Met Gala. These are some of the people that were there. And of course, it was what they call a star-studded event, which, we need to get rid of celebrity worship, period. I just do not think that we should be worshiping celebrities. We should be past that. We're grown now. It's 2026. But let's just share with you guys for context.
Are you coming to strong up a man? They say.
So I don't want to, get copyright claim, but there's music in the background. So it shows what's happening in Gaza. Here's Beyonce. She was actually there. And so you see, of course, there's Snoop Dogg right there. But look at the kids in Africa. Look at the kids in Congo and Sudan. You have Rihanna and A$AP Rocky. Here's one of the Jenners, right? Look at, this is in DRC, mining, right? Here's Katy Perry. All this. And then these kids that are starving. Look at all these people. They have all this money. They can dress up in these big, beautiful gowns and nice suits. Here's kids in Gaza. These are little Palestinian children, and they're imitating the adults that carry the dead bodies to help, or the hurt bodies to the hospital. That's what they're doing. Kids do what they see. And so they're imitating the life-saving people of Gaza who are taking people out of the rubble to save their lives or to dignify burying the people who were martyred. And you have little children that are imitating that because that's all they see. This is what Chris Smalls is fighting for. This is why he protested. And so that's what happened. And so all this opulence, right, that has taken place. So let me go here as well. I just wanted to share that piece to people, especially who are not in the United States, who don't know what the Met Gala is or the Met Gala. Let me see here. And so let's share also this. I think that this is basically the equivalent of AOC wearing a tax the rich dress. This is Sarah Paulson, which to me, this is just, it's virtue signaling at best. This is nowhere near what Christian Smalls was doing. And yet Sarah Paulson was able to go to the Met Gala all because she got money. All right, so it has music. So let me pause and mute. But as you can see, she has the dollar bill as a visor, so she can see. But it's funded by Jeff Bezos. Why are you there if you're there in protest? If you're protesting, why aren't you outside, Sarah? Why aren't you there outside with people like Christian Smalls? This is virtue signaling. You're there, and by you being there and modeling, you're supporting the very thing that you say you detest. You have a dollar bill over your eyes because that basically means that the money is shielding you from seeing the harm and hurt from America. And yet you're contributing to that same harm. And so this is the juxtaposition that I want to share. Okay, so let me go into this as well. And this one is going to be what exactly happened to Christian Smalls. So here's going to be the outside view. I think I'm trying to remember the actress's name, but she passes by. Okay, so they're not going to show her just yet, but I want to share this angle, and then there's another angle. There's actually two more angles that I want to share with you guys, just so that, because people are like, well, how do you know it's Chris Smalls? Well, there are close-ups. So let's share this here. All right, let's go. So if you guys can see, commotion right there. All right, right there in the middle with the glasses, that's Chris Smalls. And thankfully, there's a lot of photographers there that are being seen.
Holy shit, what happened?
And they're being very rough with him. By the way, he's only one person.
Guys, it's a
and you got a ton of police. There has to be like 10, 12 police on him. Okay, wait, hang on. Here is, we see Angela Bassett passing right there. Boom. There's Angela Bassett. Christian Smalls is getting dragged to the ground behind Angela Bassett. So a black man is being dragged to the ground for protesting what black people especially are going through in businesses like Amazon. And yet there's Angela Bassett just passing along at the Met Gala, right? And here's the thing. Don't get me wrong. I love some Angela Bassett in the movies. I do. At the same time, I also see that there is this class divide, even within Black American community, where they will focus on Black excellence as being part of capitalism versus real Black excellence being part of real Black liberation away from capitalism. And so, unfortunately, a lot of Black people who are in these elite circles, these A-list circles, will turn a blind eye to the plight of Black people, or they'll say, oh, well, we really do care. And then they'll donate to charities that really don't do much for us, and they don't do much for actually changing the system. They just want to keep the system in place so that it gives relevancy to the nonprofit industrial complex. So it really doesn't help Black people for real. It's just a facade, right? It's just a veil to make it look like they actually care about Black people. I'm not saying that she doesn't care about Black people, but what I'm saying is that there's a disconnect. There's a deep disconnect. And I say the same thing about Beyonce and Jay-Z that were there too. Because the thing is they make too much money to care about their fellow Black people. They're too far removed from the Black community to care about us anymore. To them, caring about Black people is just an aesthetic. It's to make them look virtuous. When in reality, on the real ground, if they actually were for real about it, they would not be at that Met Gala. And also, they would be at risk of losing their talent agency. Their agents would run away from them. Their managers would probably run away from them and all that stuff. They'd be in the same realm as someone like an Amanda Seales. Do you see Amanda Seales at that Met Gala? No. Why? Why not? Do you see Angelica Ross at that Met Gala? No. I don't see her. I don't see her. Do you see Boots Riley at that Met Gala? No. I don't see him over there. I don't see him there. Did you see Kyrie Irving there? No. I don't see Kyrie Irving over there. He wore the kufiya too much to be invited to the Met Gala. He's too pro-Black to be invited to the Met Gala. They don't like him over there. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing things out, though. Right? Okay. Wait, has Michael Jackson ever went to the Met Gala? I don't remember him ever being talked about going there. Guys, put in the chat or in the comments if Michael Jackson ever went to the Met Gala. I can't look it up right now because I'm actually curious about that. Has he ever been? Let me know. But I'm actually quite curious about that. But I'm going to share with you guys another angle because it's worse than what we thought. So here's the clip from Entertainment Tonight. They actually saw a clip. So here's, oh my God, what's her name? Jennifer Lawrence. Walking up right now. I think that's Jennifer Lawrence. It looks like Jennifer Lawrence. And so she's going to run as soon as they attack Chris Smalls. Let's go. Whoop. See that? Look at that face. She saw a black man and she ran. Sorry. I'm sorry. All right, let's go. Look at that. Y'all saw him? Mm-hmm. All them cops and one man. By the way, if you guys know, Chris Noth didn't have any weapons on him. All he had was a sign. I'm going to show you guys too.
Right, it was like a billboard.
It keeps going. We'll come back up. And they're acting like nothing's happening. And they make it so that the people who are protesting, they cannot be seen. They do not want protesters to be able to be seen. All right, so let me share you guys this. All right, so let me share this with y'all. All right, so here's Kristen Smalls in the car, by the way. All right, let's go.
You let me out.
All you have to do is sign. That's it. No weapons. There you go.
It's crazy.
Also, I just want a special note for you guys. He's surrounded by black cops. When they say, "Oh, we just got to change the system from the inside," that don't work. Case in point, that don't work. Because you need to change the system. And so this is why black cops are cops first and black second. Let's be real. Let's continue. All right, so I also have, I think I have another angle here. Let me make sure I have that ready for you guys, because there was a few hang on. Okay. Yeah. It's going to allow me. Hang on. Might need a refresh. Okay. Okay, no, that's the one I already put up. Let me see here. Let me. Okay, I'm going to share this with you guys too, because I want to make sure I get this one so you guys can see. All right, so it says Chris's team needs help finding him. Call the precincts in the area, help find Chris. Are all those cops necessary? When you got millions of dollars and they care more about the people who have a lot of money than they do about one man? Well, I guess they do. That's all they care about. Yep. And all he had was a sign, guys. All he had was a sign. And to them, that was the most dangerous thing. Because they were more focused on the feelings of the rich than they were on actually helping the people who were disaffected the most. That's basically what it is. That's how it goes. And so one of the things I do want to go into is, let me see. Okay. There is a update on here, so I'm going to read it for you guys, and then I shall show you something to uplift your spirits even more, because I know, I hate seeing our comrades go through this, but he tried his best to show people the system for what it is. But Communal Press says, update from Chris's lawyer. Chris Smalls is being held at NYPD Manhattan Central Booking and waiting to see a judge around 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is just passed. Jail support needed at 1 p.m. NYPD Manhattan Central Booking, 100 Center Street, New York, 10013. So if you are in New York and you want to support Christian Smalls, that's where he's at. It says he is being charged with a misdemeanor. Thank God it's not anything serious. Medical aid wasn't administered. We don't know his condition yet. So it says it's 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York City. So that was early this morning, and they can't find Chris. It says Central Park, and then they have Manhattan Central Booking. So Central Park is 212-570-4820. The 19th is 212-452-0600, and Manhattan Central Booking is 212-374-3838. Says Chris was holding a sign. His sign said, quote, Amazon refuses to negotiate contract with its union at JFK 8. It has been over 1,500 days. I spent 5 days in Israeli prison because Amazon invests in genocide. This is why also they hate Chris Smalls. Because not only is he attacking the elites, but he's also attacking Zionism. So it further says, update from Chris's lawyer. Chris Smalls being held at NYPD Manhattan Central Booking. I think let me see. Okay, I read that already. Okay. So if you guys can support Chris, if you're in New York or you're able to get to New York, deeply appreciate it. Please let me know in the comments if you can go. And if there's any GoFundMe for legal fees, things like that, or any type of crowdfunding for legal fees, then I will make sure to post it. Because we need to keep speaking out against, what's going on. Because Chris Smalls, he has been doing the damn thing in regards to helping out the people and trying to do the best that he can, and he's not some guy with unlimited funds. He doesn't have all this money like, all these other people do, but he's trying his best. And so I have one more video that I want to share with you guys. And this is them walking Christian Smalls away. And so let's show this here. Now it says Chris Smalls, the leading figure in Amazon labor union in the U.S., was arrested during a protest outside of Gala in New York. The protests targeted Amazon and its founder, Jeff Bezos, with demonstrators calling out labor conditions and the influence of billionaires at major cultural events. Details around the arrest remain limited, but the moment has sparked widespread outrage online about workers' rights and corporate power. So let's share this here. So there you see Christian Smalls being dragged away by police, mainly by black cops. And to see how they're treating him, walking him away. All that's not necessary. All that is not necessary, and yet they're dragging him away like that. Because they're more concerned with protecting property and rich people than they ever are about the people. Now, one thing I do want to highlight is something in the positive realm, because yes, Chris Smalls did what he could to highlight what was going on at the Met Gala. But there's one thing that I think that is positive that the Met Gala couldn't do, which was highlight real people who are doing the real work in these United States. And so I want to share this as well. Shout out to Novara Media. And so it says, hours before the 2026 Met Gala, which was sponsored by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, union organizers put on a ball without billionaires in New York, featuring Amazon delivery drivers, warehouse workers, and campaigners. Working people are underpaid, undervalued, underappreciated. So that's from Gabriella Carefa Johnson. She said, let those billionaire uptown have their Met party. We're going to have something way more fabulous down here. So this is what I call the people's fashion show. They're going to be serving, and you guys are going to absolutely enjoy this. And I know Chris Smalls would be at something like this if he could, to help support them. Maybe he was there, but I'm glad that they also did this as well. Let's take a look.
For years, she worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for up to 60 hours, lifting heavy items and working at a fast pace. For so long, it left Samari exhausted and in pain. She's not in pain now. She circulated a petition among her coworkers and filed an OSHA complaint about air quality in the facility, and Amazon had no choice but to respond quickly. Within days of delivering the petition, you better work. Right. Amazon hired a company to clean the AC units and get rid of the mold. She is here today to have a real impact and show others you don't have to be afraid to speak up.
Woo! Amazon is a surveillance company, an immigration enforcement company, a fossil fuel company too. Thank you. From the warehouse floor to your front door to the data centers going up in our neighborhoods, Amazon's reach touches every single one of our lives. And today, the people fighting back on every single one of these fronts are here on this runway. Woo! So let's get into it. Dickie knows that the impersonal quantity over quality culture at Amazon does not stop at the warehouse door.
No.
And you are fabulous, honey.
Fabulous.
She came here and she organized. When Angelina first learned Amazon's plans to build a hyperscale data center across the street from her home, she immediately began to organize.
No. One thing more powerful than a billionaire, and it's a union.
Yes.
Through the power of their union, Jordan and thousands of other doormen in the city just negotiated with luxury landlords and won an amazing union contract that includes pay raises, free health.
Oh man, working people, man, we have some of the best senses of humor. I love it.
Amazing union contract that includes pay raises, free healthcare, pension contribution, and other great benefits. Jordan interacts with Amazon workers every day, and he knows that they deserve the same protections and benefits that he has. Norma is passionate about providing care to our elders. Through her union, she is fighting alongside other home care workers to be recognized as the skilled healthcare professionals that they are.
Woo! Working people are undervalued, underpaid, and underappreciated. So let those billionaires uptown have their mat party or whatever. Like, we're gonna do something way more fabulous down here.
Right.
And that is how you do it. Oh my goodness. Look, those workers there, they're doing the damn thing. They deserve a round of applause because they just continue to do not just the work for helping this world move, but they also do the work that continues to usher us forward. And the spirit that, you know, Chris Smalls embodies is embodied in all those workers as well. And I hope it embodies you to do more for the, you know, the people as we continue on this fight. Just solidarity with Chris Smalls as he, and I hope he's okay, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I hope he's doing all right. And I hope he has an overwhelming, huge support waiting for him once he walks out of there. I'm glad he's only just getting a misdemeanor, and I hope he can just fight that and just say, well, free speech, because it looked like it was on a public street. But anyways, but yes, number one, free Chris Smalls. Number two, free all the marginalized people around the world. And, you know, I don't hear this enough, but free Black Americans, because we're still under occupation here, and land back for all the natives here in the United States and all indigenous people around the globe. And workers of the world unite, man. All right. And take care. All right, guys, let's give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to all of you who are in here. All right, so let's go and check on the kick. And let's see. Yep, we're good on kick. And let's get into Rumble. Rumble. All right. We're good. Okay. All right. So we got a few on Rumble. We'll show on let's go into the rest of the chat. I think I just saw something that I almost started laughing. All right, guys, hang on. Let me try to go up. Oh, Netflix foreign says, oh, apparently you can buy seeds with food stamps, JB. Yeah, but you also have to have a way to be able to grow them. Some apartments do not allow plants. Some do, or some plants you can't grow in just pots or buckets on your porch. And then some apartments also have strict rules regarding your porches and things like that. So you can only do limited. So if you can, then great. This is great information for them. But also, if you buy certain plants, you don't even need to buy seeds. Like, for instance, you can regrow celery, You can regrow celery. I think you can do onions. For potatoes, if you have like a bucket, you can just like plant one potato and then it starts to grow. You know, those eyes, they actually sprout. Scallions, I definitely know you can do. All you got to do is just make sure, you know, you still have like the root and everything, and then you can just put that in water. There's some things that you like you can still do. I think you can also do tomatoes as well. You can do a tomato plant in a bucket, like one of those 5-gallon buckets. So there's some things you can do, but there's some things it's not really feasible. There was a video that did dwarf trees that you probably can grow in potted plants that I think they're between like 4 and 6 feet. You probably could do on your back porch, and they can do like apples, Meyer lemons. Meyer lemons are gigantic, by the way. They're not as strong in sourness as regular lemons, but Meyer lemons are really good. You can also do like blueberry bushes. There's a lot of different things. But yeah, you can actually plant dwarf trees. So that's one thing you could do if you wish. But they need to be outside. Just letting you guys know. And you have to have the right climate for that. And you have to be attentive to them. So just letting you guys know. But yeah. So thank you very much for that. Let's continue on. The auspicious says USA went into global South countries, told them borrow a loan from the World Bank. We'll build you a power grid, roads, and your GDP will grow 25%. It was always a lie. It was 5 to 8% growth. Yep. Yeah. Because the thing is, they needed to extract and they needed a vassal. That's basically what it is. Netflix says Met Gala is just a giant, you know what I mean? Let's be honest. Yeah, it is basically a bunch of celebrities sniffing each other's farts. Under the premise of, oh, we're actually helping advance art. Right. The auspicious also says 80 cents out of every dollar borrowed went back to American engineering companies. A few at the head of the countries got rich, while the cost of life was out of the reach of the majority. Yeah, absolutely. Edward says, JB, thanks for mentioning that Chris Small was protesting outside of Gala. Mainstream media didn't talk about this at all. It is discussing that NYPD violently arrest Chris. Kudos to Chris. And yeah, and here's the thing. Not only did Chris get roughed up and beat up by IDF, but he also got roughed up and beat up by the same people that the IDF trained. Isn't it ironic? Man. It's sad, man. Sad. Let me see here. Let me see. This is a good question. Netflix says maybe, I'm sorry, JB, does anyone actually give a ish about the Met Gala short of being the rich in a very small subset of NYC? I don't know. All my people who watch from NYC, I know Roger is in New York. Who else is in New York? Comment and let Netflix foreign know. I'm not sure. I'm not in New York. I would imagine that it's more of just a national interest because the Met Gala is every year. So I don't know. And the funny thing is, like, it's every first Monday in May. I think it's every first Monday in May. So that might be it. Yeah. But yeah. Alan, thank you so much for the love. The same thing. Thank you so much for the love. Chu Sensei. Let me see. Truth Sensei also says, all eyes on global freedom flotilla sailing to Palestine now. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm glad that they are. Let me see. This is a great point. Jacqueline says Michael Jackson could definitely have afforded the cost of a ticket if he had been invited. My thing is, like, why hasn't he been invited? Was the Palestine song was when he said they don't care about us? That might have been it. Might have been it. Jacqueline, this is America. Do they really need that many police officers to arrest one presumably unarmed man? He's black. He's black. And remember what I said about the aesthetics, right? They'll look at the aesthetics and they'll see a black man. They'll see him that he has, gold in his mouth. They'll see him, they'll see how he's dressed. And they'll automatically have this stereotype in their heads about who he is and how he is. There's a great video on Instagram that I saw. And it's this black teacher. And you have all these young black men in high school. And they got on the shiesties, the ones where it goes over the head, it's all black, and they just show their eyes and everything else is covered. And then they'll walk into class all quiet with shiesties on. And then he'll walk up to the teacher all quiet and then get his paper with the grade on it. And it says A+ on it. And he just takes it and drops it and just walks away. And then another one with a shiesty on comes and the grade is A++. And he'll just take it and walk away. And then they're like solving algebraic equations of the board with the shiesty on, or one is practicing guitar, or one is complaining about, how his girlfriend doesn't really communicate with him very well and they need more communication. Like, it's just, and the thing is, like, it's based on how when we see young black men, we will automatically have this preconceived notion of him in a certain way, when in reality, that's not really who he is. We're just judging based on appearance. And police often do that too. Yes, the auspicious says, cops say black cops are worse because they are trying to fit in and need to prove something to the white officers. Yeah, that's true. Let me see. Roger says, what are you talking about, JB? I had 5 cops roll on me for jaywalking a month and a half ago. The guy gave me a ticket, must have been new on the force. You got a ticket for jaywalking? My goodness. I hope it wasn't expensive. Roger says, Chris gave me his phone number when I met him at the Don Zinger block party. I wanted to ask him about will he be willing to help us fight for the New York Health Cat. Dude never responded. Chris Smalls is very hard to get. I'm gonna be real with you. Like, I have a hard time getting him. I don't think he's doing that on purpose. I just think he's very hard to get as far as like DMs and text messages. I don't think he responds that much. I just don't think he's that type of guy. You know what I mean? He's, there's certain people that are just very hard to get. Vegan for Earth says bell peppers, very high in vitamin C, actually higher vitamin C than oranges. All right, guys. So I am over. But I just want to make sure. Vic Adams says 3 heirloom bush beans per 5-gallon bucket will produce about a pound of dried beans. Thank you very much for that. Helping out the people. Vegan for Earth says those roads and infra all are and often just built to bring resources to port and export to global worth. World Bank and IMF are the debt traps they use to claim China development is. Yeah, that's also true. IMF and World Bank really are the culprits. Marlo World says they need to see the takedown, also an intimidation tactic. Yeah. They also want to see people get taken down, just like Chris Smalls did, because they don't want other people to try to do the same thing. Yeah. Marlo World says, and the one where he's talking about YNs need hugs because black boys are adultified as F, so they get less hugs. Yeah. Yeah. I think more affection should be due to young black men, because there's this fear that they're going to okay, first of all, I'm not going to go on, don't go on a tangent, James, do not go on a tangent. But there's this fear of young black men being turned gay just because you hug them a little too much. That's not going to happen. You can't turn them gay. That's not a thing. You can't turn somebody that. Either they are or they're not. Or they could be bisexual. Or they could just be, fluid. But that's because they always were. You can't turn somebody something. You know what I mean? That being the case, if he's straight, you can hug him a million times, he's still going to be straight. It don't matter. The thing is like, but at the same time, will he feel better, more secure, have more self-esteem, knowing that he's loved? Yes. Will that affect his mental health? Yes. Might as well, because it's not going to turn him any such a way. Like, for instance, you can have 1 million women hug me, and I'm still going to be looking at dudes. I'm like, oh my God, girl, thank you so much for the hug. Is that your uncle? Hi, how you doing? You know what I mean? Seeing straight people kiss my entire life ain't made me straight. I mean, hello. I couldn't be turned straight, so you can't turn a person gay or bisexual. So, but yes, the thing is, like, I think we need to have more affection, but I think we're divided so much as a country, and technology is kind of pushing that for us to be more divided. And we need more warmer contact with other human beings. This means talking face to face, interacting face to face, affection, both verbal and physical affection, things like that, because we are a communal species and we don't want to walk away from that because it affects us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So yes, absolutely, Marlo, thank you so very much for that. Appreciate it. All right, guys, so I'm going to be heading on out because I am late, but you guys have so many good points and I absolutely love you guys. Yes, I said, is that your uncle? Because look, let me tell. You know what? I'm not going to get myself in trouble. I'm just going to say graduations are my favorite because then you get to see the dads. Look, I'm a man of a certain age, all right? And if I was straight, I'd be looking at their mama. Like, hey, yo, is that your mom? Hey, Miss Thompson. Let me get out of here, y'all. Let me share something to make y'all laugh, just so we can head on out and have some fun. Because I want you guys to smile and just have a good rest of your day, okay? Because I like y'all. So I was looking at some funny stuff, and I don't know if I should do I think I already talked about that. Oh my goodness. So many good stuff. I think I'll do this one. This one's different, but it is hilarious. Okay. Actually, let me take it down so you guys can hear I want y'all to hear the whole thing. Okay. So we're gonna finish with something funny, and then I'm out because I gotta show my love for y'all. But I want you all to have fun and have a good feeling when y'all leave the show. So let's just listen.
Oh.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the channel. I love you guys for watching. I love you guys for being you. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. Free Chris Smalls, also free Maduro, and also and look, free everybody who's marginalized, and continue to fight alongside your fellow workers because we absolutely need it. And yeah, if you guys can find a cheaper airline to help people to be able to get to where they need to go, send that information along. All right, guys, take care. Love you guys. Forehead kisses. I'll see you guys in the next one. Good night. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here. Forehead kisses. Have